Hello everyone. In this video we look at the heat transfer part of thermal properties of matter. Now thermal properties of matter, the whole chapter, right? We divide this into three parts. One is a calorimetry part, which is like the precursor to thermodynamics. We have a separate video on that. Then thermal expansion, we have made a separate video on that also. The third part is of course what we are going to cover now, which is about the heat transfer. So in heat transfer, we will mainly focus on the three modes of heat transfer. One is conduction, second is convection, and the third is the radiation. So we will talk about how these things will happen and what are the things that we need to focus from examination point of view. Okay. So when we talk about just going back to the idea of heat energy, we know that heat energy is basically the energy associated with the what we call as the thermal motion of particles. So if you have a body at a high temperature, you can see this is at a high temperature, right? So we can see the thermal agitations are more. So here we are considering that this is a solid object. That's why there will be no movement of particles, in the sense the translation motion will not be there, but there is only the vibration. Like the particles, you can see they are vibrating about the mean position. So the body at high temperature, we can see the vibrations, the amplitude of vibrations, we can say is what higher. A body at a low temperature, right, what is it that will observe? The vibrations of the particles are less prominent. So this is how we look at the microscopically how a body will possess the heat energy. We talk about the solids, of course, here. Now the thing is, this heat energy will flow from one place to other place, and that is what we are going to cover. So here when we talk about the heat transfer, means what we're talking about, how the heat will flow from one place to other place. So to get an idea of what are all the ways in which heat can transfer from one place to other place, we'll just look at this example. So this is the best way of explaining how the three modes of heat transfer can be represented. Think of it. I'm sure in winter, right, a lot of us would experience this. So during winter, in the early morning, right, so we'll put the fire. So the fire using a wood stick or the old unwanted papers or something, so we'll just burn them. So when you're burning them, right, you can see a lot of people they will place themselves around that fire in different positions. So somebody who's keeping the hands just above the fire, what they would realize or what they would observe is of course they will be able to receive heat, and they would receive heat through a mechanism what we call as the convection. What is this convection? We will talk about it, but just to give an idea, right, the particles of the air which are just above the fire, they absorb the heat, and when they absorb the heat, they become less in terms of density. The density of the layer of particles will get reduced. So since the density is reduced, they will move up. The heavier layer will come down. So when they are moving up, right, what do you see? This layer of air particles, they will go and touch the hands of the person, so that he is able to realize the heat. So this way of movement of particles, so the heat transfer is actually happening because of movement of particles, is what we will be referring as the convection. We'll talk about this in detail. The other, if you are holding a metal rod or something, and one end of the rod we are keeping straight into the fire or just above the fire, the other end you are holding it. What you will observe is through this rod, right, you can see in the diagram we are showing that there is a red color that is basically spreading gradually. So this is the heat that is getting through the rod from the hot end. This side is what So this side we have the hot end, this side we can say it is what, cold end. So from hot end it is moving towards the cold end through the metal rod. So this is what we call as the conduction. So conduction requires a medium. This is an important point we need to keep in mind. So conduction requires a medium. So in this case, what is the medium here? It is the metal rod. Generally metals are good conductors of heat as well as electric current. The other mode of heat transfer, like instead of keeping the hands just above the fire, if somebody is a little bit farther, keeping the hands almost like sidewise to the fire, he will also receive the heat. So he would receive the heat in the form of what we call as the electromagnetic waves or electromagnetic radiation. So what is this electromagnetic waves? We'll study a little bit more about it in the +2. We'll have a chapter itself called as electromagnetic waves. But we must have some idea about electromagnetic waves even from your chemistry knowledge. In structure of atom chapter, right, you will learn about the Planck's quantum theory. So Planck's quantum theory talks about how the energy will be moving in the form of electromagnetic radiation. I'm sure you recall this formula, right? The quantization of energy of each packet will be equal to what? Either h nu or hc by lambda. So energy will be moving in the form of packets or quantum of energy. So each quanta or packet will have how much energy? H nu or hc by lambda. That and all is something that is related to the chemistry part, but just to get the idea of the electromagnetic waves. So electromagnetic waves consists of a wide range of the spectrum, including the visible light. So the visible light that we see, right, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, this is a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Other than this, we'll have ultraviolet, we'll have infrared, microwaves, TV waves, all these things, X-rays. But this is the third mode, where here we don't have the actual movement of particles. In convection, what is happening? There is actual movement of particles. Conduction, we have mentioned that we require a medium. The radiation, right, the energy from sun to the earth will come in the form of same electromagnetic waves. In between there is no medium, right? So electromagnetic waves can travel even without a medium. That is the reason why radiation, right, it does not require a medium. I mean, it can travel through medium also, but as such it does not require a medium. Like some waves, right, like sound waves, they require a medium for the propagation. Electromagnetic waves, they don't require a medium for the propagation. Okay, so this is about the story of three modes of heat transfer. We have convection, then conduction, and then radiation. So in the heat transfer chapter, right, or this part of the thermal properties of matter, we will see how each of these modes of heat transfer will be studied and what is it that is important from JEE point of view. So we will begin with the conduction. So conduction is basically, if you have, let's say this is the medium, the line of people you are saying is the medium. So this is the hot and this is the cold. If you take the heat to be like the book or the packet, we see the people are locked here in their positions, they are not moving. Just the heat is transferred. How it is transferred from one person to other person. We will see how it happens when we talk about the actual particles. So the point is that the particles don't move, but particles will keep exchanging layer by layer. This is different from the actual movement. Like say for example, if this is a particle which is getting heat, this is not going to take the heat and then move to the other place. It is not happening. So conduction, there is no actual movement of particles. Particles don't move, but particles only transfer energy from one layer to the other layer. So how it happens, we can understand this with the molecular theory of the thermal conduction. So observe this carefully. So this is the hot end, and let's say this is the material. We are looking at a metal rod or something in a microscopic view. The part of the layer which is in contact with the this is the fire. It will absorb the heat. So it will have a higher level of thermal vibrations. These vibrations keep getting transmitted. The next layer will start vibrating more. The next layer will, so as a sequence, what is happening? The vibrations will keep getting transferred to the next layer and so on. So you can see the entire material is appearing red after some time. So this way the thermal energy is being transferred from one layer to the other layer. And again here there is no actual, so the layer 1, if you mark it, is as it is there. Layer 2 is also not moving from its place. Layer 3 is also not moving. So layers are not moving. The first layer will start vibrating more and the vibrations will transfer to the second layer. Second layer will start vibrating. That will be transferred to the third layer and so on. So when we talk about the conduction in solids, right, the molecular theory of thermal conduction is one thing that is widely accepted, and the heat will be transmitted from the high temperature side to the low temperature side without the actual movement of particles. This is important. Only the vibrations will keep getting transmitted from one layer to other layer. The actual movement of particles will not be there. So this is the molecular theory of the thermal conduction. And when we look at the normal in properties of fluids also, right, like say for example we have a pipe, imagine. Okay, so there is a pipe. Now from one end of the pipe we'll start the flow of water or flow of a liquid into the pipe. Immediately we will not see the water coming outside, isn't it? Because it will take some time for the water to actually establish inside the pipe. After a while we will see that the water will come out, isn't it? And once we see the water coming out, then we will say this is a steady state. So remember, in properties of fluids, right, we have a very important law. What is it? The equation of continuity. Equation of continuity is about what? The steady state. So whatever the amount of water coming in, the same amount of water will leave the pipe in a given time. I hope you guys recall the equation of continuity is what? A1 V1 is equal to A2 V2. So what is A1? The area of cross section. V1 is the speed of the water jet. A2 is the area of cross section here. V2 is what? The speed of the water jet at the exit side. So this A1 V1 or A2 V2, right, that is what we call as the volume flow rate. So this, of course, assuming the density of the liquid is not changing, the volume flow rate will remain the same. Okay. Now the same concept applies to here also in case of the conduction. Just like the way we see the flow of water, here we will talk about the flow of heat. So when we talk about the steady state, right, no part of the rod will absorb heat. Meaning, so if you have a rod, so for most of the discussion, right, we will take the rod of a uniform cross section area. So when we talk about the steady state of heat transfer, whatever is the rate of heat entering will be equal to what? The rate of heat leaving. So any cross section you take, there will be no accumulation of the heat. This is when we reach the steady state. And the discussions, right, that we do will be for the steady state. So whenever we talk about the conduction, we will look at the analysis of the conduction once the steady state is reached. Because before the steady state is reached, what is going to happen? Different parts of the material, they will start accumulating heat. And we will see actually what happens is when you have a hot end, which is at, say for example 100 degrees Celsius. We have a cold end which is maybe at 30 degrees Celsius. When we keep a rod connecting between the hot end and the cold end, before we reach steady state, what would happen is there will be a temperature profile that will be developed. So as we move from hot end to cold end, the temperature will gradually change from 100 to 30. Initially the entire rod might be at 30, but when we keep one end of the rod at 100, we will see that the rod will develop a temperature profile. Means these parts of the rod which are gaining temperature, right, they are basically absorbing heat. So till we reach steady state, some heat will be absorbed by different parts of the rod. And once the steady state is reached, whatever the rate of heat that is entering any cross section of the rod you take, whatever the heat that is entering in a given time, same amount of heat must leave in the same amount of time. Okay, so this is about the steady state condition. Now the law of conduction is basically a law that will give us expression for the rate of heat transfer or the rate of flow of heat. So if you consider a rod of uniform cross section area A, where the length of the rod is L and the temperature difference between both the ends is delta T. So what is observed is the rate of flow of heat. We can also call it as conduction power. Why conduction power? Because heat is energy, energy per time is what? Power, right? So we can also call it as what? Conduction power. So the rate of heat transfer through conduction will be directly proportional to the temperature difference between the, so how the heat will flow, it will flow from the hot end to the cold end. So the rate will be directly proportional to what? The temperature difference between the hot end and the cold end. So this is how the heat will flow from hot side to the cold side. And it will be directly proportional to the area of cross section, means larger area of cross section means more amount of heat can flow. And it will be inversely proportional to the length. So summing up these relation, right, what we'll have is the conduction power, we can say, is what is proportional to A delta T by L. So whenever we have a proportional relation, we can make this into an equation. That's what we call as the equation for the thermal conduction. So the equation is the conduction power delta Q by delta T. So here this is what the time for which we are measuring the heat flow will be equal to a constant K into A into delta T by L. So in some textbooks, right, instead of putting it as a delta T, they may even represent this by the symbol delta theta, because the temperature can be indicated by either capital T or theta. So why they do it is because we get two T symbols here. One is the capital T for the temperature, other is the small t for the time. So just to avoid the confusion, right, some textbooks they may use that notation. That's okay. Okay. So here the K that we are seeing here is basically called as the thermal conductivity, which is a property of material. So generally we will assume that this is a constant. It can also vary. It can also vary based on the temperature at which the material is maintained, etc. But broadly we can assume that this is a constant. But it will be a property of the material. Like, you know, for iron we'll have a value of K. For copper we'll have a value of K, like that. So whenever we get a new term or a new quantity or a new constant, obviously one question that we need to be ready with is what is the unit and what is the dimensional formula of that quantity or the constant. So here one question that can be asked is, what will be the dimensional formula for the thermal conductivity? So just, you know, check this. So I'll just erase some part in the left side so that we can use for the dimensional formula calculation. So what will be the unit and what will be the dimensional formula for the thermal conductivity? Check this. So first we'll go with the dimensional formula, right? Left hand side, delta Q means what? It is the heat that is flowing, which is energy basically. So what is it? M L square T power minus 2 divided by denominator is what? Delta T means the time for which you are observing, which is what? T, is equal to right hand side K. This dimensional formula is what we want. Area of cross section, right? L square. Delta T or delta theta, this is about what? Temperature, right? So we can use K as a symbol for the temperature, or we can even use a theta, whichever, by L is what? Length. So 1L gets cancelled. Then, you know, m L square T power minus 3 whole divided by L into theta will come to the denominator. So this is the K. So 1L gets cancelled. So what is it? M L T power minus 3 theta power minus 1. So this is what is the dimensional formula for the thermal conductivity. Same we can talk about the unit also. So let's see what will be the unit, SI unit of thermal conductivity. So here if you look at it, right, left hand side is what? Joule per second is equal to K. We are looking for the unit of this. This is meter square into this is Kelvin. This is meter. So we can see Joule divided by meter second Kelvin. So we can do some simplification here. Otherwise we can just leave it as it is. So what we can say, it is what? Joule per second means what? Watt per meter per Kelvin. So this is the SI unit of thermal conductivity. So whenever we get a, as I said, new physical quantity or a new constant, right? Obviously the one question that we need to be ready with is the unit and as well as the dimensional formula. Let's just look at this simple question. Which of the following rods, the radius and length are given? So we are assuming that the rods are basically what? Cylindrical, uniform cross section. Each is made up of the same material. Same material means what? All of them will have the same thermal conductivity K value, whose ends are maintained at the same temperature. Means when we maintain the ends at the same temperature means what? All the rods have the same hot end temperature. All the rods are having the same cold end temperature. Means delta theta also will be what? Same. So K value is same for all of them. Delta theta is also same. Will conduct most heat. Means in which case, simply they are asking this, the conduction power is higher. What is the formula for the conduction power? Just now we saw it. What is it? Ka by L into delta theta. This is the formula, right? The conduction power is what? Ka by L into delta theta. Now for all of them, delta theta is same, K is also same. So if you take the rod to be like a cylindrical, A is equal to what? Pi r square. Now wherever the A by L is maximum, that is where the conduction power is maximum. So we'll just look at each of these options, right? So we'll have to check where we will get the A by L value to be maximum. So we'll just go one by one. Option 1, radius is r naught, length is L naught. So A by L means what? Pi r naught square by L naught. Second, radius is a 2 r naught, length is L naught. Pi into 2 r naught square by L naught. What is it? 4 pi r naught square by L naught. That is the A by L value for the option 2. Option C, radius is r naught, length is 2 L naught. Pi into r naught square by 2 L naught. Option, they are giving A, B, C, D, we are taking them as 1, 2, 3, 4. Option D, radius is 2 r naught, length is 2 L naught. So pi into 2 r naught the square divided by 2 L naught. What is it? That is 2 pi r naught square by L naught. Because 2 square means what? It will become 4. So 1, 2 gets cancelled. We will have what? Overall 2 pi r naught square by L naught. Now you tell me, these are all what? The corresponding A by L values. Because K is same for all of them. Because they are saying, every rod is made up of same material. And the hot ends and cold ends are maintained at the same temperatures. Means what? Delta theta is same for all of them. So wherever the A by L value is maximum, right? That will have the higher value of conduction rate. So look at this, where it is maximum? Our option 2 or option B in this case. So what is the answer for this? It is option B, which will be having a higher value for the conduction rate, or we can say conduction power. And that's what will be conducting most amount of heat in a given time. Okay. Now when we have a rod of uniform cross section, as we said, if you have a temperature, this is, let's say for example, this is the hot temperature end and this is the cold temperature end. So when we keep a rod between T1 and T2, we will see that the heat will flow from a hot end to the cold end. As I said, right, the temperature profile. So when we are talking about the steady state, what we will have is a temperature profile. Temperature profile means what? The temperature will be gradually decreasing from hot end side to the cold end. We will see how we will find the temperature profile. Finding temperature profile means what? If you take any part, let's say from the hot end, we are marking position X. The total length of the rod is L. From the hot end, we are marking a position X. We want to find what is the temperature here. So the task is finding the temperature of a section of the rod at a distance X. So this is the section of the rod. We are dealing with what? Steady state. So how do we find this T value? Now for this, what we will do is, whatever the heat coming from the left side, same amount of heat must leave to the right side, isn't it? The rate of conduction that is coming in should be equal to the rate of conduction that is leaving. That's when we call it a steady state, right? No heat accumulation should be there. Look at this left part. What is the formula? Because if you say that the thermal conductivity of the material is K, what is the conduction rate here? K A by X, length is X, into delta theta, means T1 minus T. The rate of conduction on the other side. So here T will be a higher temperature, T2 will be a lower temperature, correct? So that's why the heat will flow from the section to the cold side. Here what will be the formula? Same K will come, same A will come. It will be what? Delta theta will be T minus T2 divided by what is the length of the portion here, L minus X. So whatever the conduction rate coming in should be equal to what? The conduction rate leaving. So which means we will get the formula. What is the formula we will get? The Ka into T1 minus T by X. Okay, so that will be equal to what? Ka into T minus T2 by L minus X. So this is the, so for the cross section that we marked, right, this is the conduction rate that is coming in. This is the conduction rate that is leaving. So obviously what we can see, Ka gets cancelled, and when we rearrange, right, we will get the value of T. So how do we get T? I mean, just we have to cross multiply, and so if you cross multiply, what happens? Check it. T1 minus T into L minus X, right? That will be equal to what? T minus T2 into X. So from this, when we simplify it, right, we will get the value of T. T will be equal to what? T1 minus T2 by L. This is what we can call as the overall temperature gradient. Means overall temperature difference by the total length of the rod. T1 minus T2 by L into X will come. So from the hot side end, we are marking a section of the rod which is the distance X. For that, what is the temperature? We can see what is it? T1 minus of the overall temperature gradient into X will come. Now here in this formula, right, so we can observe a couple of things. If the section that we are marking is the hot end itself, means what? X will be 0. So put X is equal to 0 here. Temperature is what? T1, that is the hot end. If we want to mark the cold end, means our X has to be what? L. So put X is equal to L in this formula. T1 minus L gets cancelled. So what is it? So what is the temperature we have? T2. That is what? The cold end. So this is the formula for the temperature, the section of the rod, which is the distance X from the hot end side. Okay, so this is an important result. And generally when we look at the questions, right, so this is an important area for question, which is about the junction temperature. Junction temperature means we can think of different types of junctions. Let us say we have a rod 1. It may have a different, let's say it may have an area of cross section A1 and the length L1. It may be made up of material whose thermal conductivity is K1. This is connected as it is to another rod. Maybe it has got a material of K2, thermal conductivity, area of cross section A2, length L2. So this is what we call as the junction. This side may be hot, this side may be the cold. The question they will ask is, what is the junction temperature? Again, same logic. Junction temperature means what? If you say that junction is at a temperature T, at steady state, whatever the conduction rate that is coming in should be equal to what? The conduction rate that is leaving. Which means if you take the junction temperature to be T, the heat that is coming in to the junction will be coming in from the rod 1. So what is the formula for that? K1A1 into T1 minus T by L1. This is the conduction rate that is coming in. On the right side, the heat that is leaving will be the heat that will be conducting through the rod 2. So what is the formula for that? K2A2, here T minus T2 by L2 will come. So from this formula, right, we can find what is the junction temperature. This is one type of simple junction. We can also have junction problems where we can have a triangular junction. So triangular junction means, look at this, we can have a rod 1 and there can be rod 2 and we may have a rod 3. So if through rod 1 and rod 2 the heat is reaching junction and rod 3 the heat is leaving, again the same concept. What is the concept? We will have to equate the conduction rate in rod 1 plus the conduction rate in rod 2, that is equal to what? The conduction rate in rod 3. Basically whatever the heat that is coming in, same amount of heat should leave in a given time, because we are talking about the steady state. Like this also we can have the junction problems. Either we can have a two rod junction or we can have a triangular junction. So these kind of problems are quite common when it comes to JEE mains or JEE advanced. Now the thing is, since we are looking at the heat flow through a metal rod or an object, very much similar to the flow of charge through a conductor, we can see some analogous relation in terms of the way we study the heat current and the way we study the electric current. So just looking at what is the heat current. Heat current means what? The conduction power or the rate of conduction of heat. So conduction power, already we have the expression, right? What is it? K, thermal conductivity of the material, into A, area of cross section, assuming we are having a rod of uniform area of cross section, into delta theta, the temperature difference. So here we are assuming this is the high temperature, this is the low temperature, divided by L. Now when we look at this expression, right, so we can just bring the Ka also into the denominator. So it will become like what? T1 minus T2 whole divided by L by K. Now when we look at it, right, see what is driving the heat current? The temperature difference, that is what is driving the heat current. Now when we look at the electric current, right, the idea is what? If you have a resistance and if one end of it is maintained at a potential V1, let's say this is a high potential and the other end is at a low potential, then what is the electric current through the resistance? It will be equal to what? V1 minus V2, which is the potential difference, divided by the R. R is the resistance value. Now just compare these two expressions. If you compare these two expressions, right, what is it that we will be able to observe is the role of resistance is exactly taken by which term? It is taken by the term L by K. So whatever is the role of resistance in the electric current, right, the same role will be played by the term L by Ka. So this L by Ka, right, is what we will be calling as the thermal resistance. So we can just make a note of it. What is it? The thermal resistance, right? The thermal resistance will be equal to what? L by Ka for a rod of uniform cross section area A of length L. So the idea is what? Just like the way we have electric current, what is the formula for the electric current? Potential difference by the resistance. So here what will be the formula for the conduction current or heat current? It will be temperature difference divided by the thermal resistance. So this is about the way we look at the conduction current analogous to the thermal or the electric current part of it. Now if you have combination of resistances, like in the case of electrical circuits, right, this is something that we'll keep seeing very often. Like we have two resistances, let's say R1 and R2, connected like this without any branching or anything. So there will be no branching, nothing. So these two will be connected such a way that whatever is the current that is going through R1, same current will go through R2 also, because there will be no branching in between. Such an arrangement, right, is what we call as a series combination. Just like that, here in case of the conducting objects, right, which are conducting the thermal current. Let's say we have a rod of length L1, area of cross section A1, and made up of a material with thermal conductivity K1. This is connected. In this way, if you connect, means what? Whatever is the conduction current through the rod 1, same conduction current will be through the rod 2 also. So this is what we call as the series combination, just like we have the series combination of the electrical resistances. Now here, right, the second rod is having a length L2, area of cross section A2. It is made up of a material with the thermal conductivity K2. Now in case of the series combination of resistances, right, electrical resistances, what is the R equivalent value? It will be equal to what? R1 plus R2. Now, just like that, if you have to replace both these rods by a single rod, so if you have to replace both of them by a single rod, the resistance of that rod is what we call as the R equivalent. So R equivalent will be given by what? R1 plus R2. It's a series combination. So what is R1? L1 by K1 into A1. What is R2? L2 by K2 into A2. So if you replace both these rods by a single rod, then for that rod, right, the overall resistance will be given by what? The series combination formula. That's it. Similarly, we can also have a parallel combination. So just like we have in electrical circuits, right, we can have a parallel combination. Like this, we can have a parallel combination. So parallel combination means the potential difference across the resistance will be same. In this case, if you see the rod 1 and rod 2, right, the temperature difference across the ends of them will be same. That is what we see as the parallel combination. So in case of parallel combination, right, the electrical circuits, the equivalent resistance is given by what? 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. Now here the same thing will happen. So if you have two rods or metal objects arranged like this, where the ends are maintained at similar temperatures. So this is let's say the hot end, temperature theta 1. The hot end of the rod 2 is also same theta 1. This is the cold end. Rod 1, cold end is at what temperature? Theta 2. Rod 2 also, the cold end is at theta 2. So this is what we call as the parallel combination. Now for the parallel combination, right, if we have to replace both of them by a single rod, the thermal resistance is given by what formula? 1 by R is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. So here just again the combination we are taking is rods of equal length, which means look at this, what is R1? L by K1 into A1. What is R2 here? L by K2 into A2. Now when we substitute them in the formula, right, what is it? K1 A1 by L, that is 1 by R1, plus K2 A2 by L, that is 1 by R2. So look at this, what we will get? K1 A1 plus K2 A2 by L, because it is the same denominator, that is equal to what? 1 by R. So what is the R value? L by K1 A1 plus K2 A2. So now if you look at it, right, if you replace both these rods by a single rod, What will be the area of cross section of the single rod? A1 plus A2. The area of cross section of single rod will be what? A1 plus A2. What is the length of the rod? L. So the equivalent rod that we replace, right, will have what will be the thermal resistance formula? L by the K value. K value is the equivalent thermal conductivity. K into A1 plus A2, because the area of cross section of the so if you replace both of them by a single rod, means the total area of cross section will be what? A1 plus A2. So this is what is our R equivalent, the value of R equivalent. Now when you equate both of them, right, so here we will be able to get what is the equivalent thermal conductivity value. So the equivalent thermal conductivity value will be K1A1 plus K2A2 by A1 plus A2. That is the equivalent thermal conductivity value for this kind of an arrangement. Okay. So this kind of questions can also be asked, like from the series combination, just like electrical circuits, we can find what is the R equivalent. R equivalent means the thermal resistance. From the parallel combination also we can find what is the R equivalent. But if you are replacing the combination of rods by a single rod, right, they can ask what is the thermal conductivity of that particular rod. Like this, if you replace both these rods by a single rod, means that will have a length L, but area of cross section is what? A1 plus A2. So there we can find what is the equivalent thermal conductivity that the combination will be having. Okay, so this is about the series and parallel combination. And some of the special cases, right, with regard to conduction are the formation of ice on the ponds. So if you look at the pond water to be at 0, the ice will be getting formed on the surface of the water when the outside temperature is lesser. So we will say the outside temperature is what? Some minus T degree Celsius. Now when the ice is getting formed, how would the ice get formed? As the heat is lost by the water near the boundary. So this is the boundary, right? So here the boundary, the heat will be lost by the water at the boundary. As it is losing the heat, it will change the phase from water to the solid state, and that heat will be lost to the surroundings. So the heat that is lost by the layer of water near the boundary will be what? It will be it will undergo conduction through the ice. Say for example, we will take a small time dt. Then if say for example the amount of heat loss by the formation of ice, because when ice is getting formed, heat will be lost, right? The heat lost by the water in the formation of ice will be what? The mass of the ice that is getting formed into the latent heat, correct? So here we will say L is the latent heat. How do we express the mass of the ice getting formed? Think of it. If say there is already a layer of ice which is having a thickness y, on top of it if there is a small increase in the layer of thickness dy, okay, area of cross section of the entire surface is what? A. So what is the volume of ice that is getting formed? A dy. If you multiply this with rho, what is it? That will give us what is the mass, correct? So that much amount of mass, because we are saying this is a very small time dt. In that, let's say the additional thickness of ice getting formed is what? Dy. So the heat that is released in that very small time interval will be what? A dy, the volume, into rho, that much amount of mass of ice is getting formed, into latent heat. Now this heat that is lost will be coming outside due to conduction. So the heat will be conducting through the ice. So how do we express the rate of conduction? Look at this. What will be the rate of conduction? If the ice thermal conductivity value is K, area of cross section is A, temperature difference is what? Here remember, the high temperature means what? 0. Low temperature means minus. So 0 minus of minus T. Okay. Divide by what is the thickness that is there, y, into dt. So this is the rate formula, rate of conduction into dt will be what? The heat that is coming through conduction in that time interval. This must be equal to what? Whatever the heat that is released because of the formation of ice, the entire amount must be coming through the ice due to conduction, correct? So we should equate it to what? A dy into rho into L. Now look at this, Ka into T by Y dt is equal to what? A dy into rho into L. So here the thing is, we have time as one variable, other variable is what? Y is the other variable. So time is one variable and other variable is what? Y. So what we will do is we will just rearrange them. So we'll just rearrange them. So but before we do that, right, let's just rewrite them one more time here. What is it? Ka T by Y into dt. This is equal to what? A dy rho L. So we'll just take the Y terms on one side. Then what we'll get? The A gets cancelled. So Kt by rho L into dt, right? That is equal to what? Y dy. So if you are integrating it, let's say starting from the ice thickness 0, we are trying to achieve a ice thickness value of some y. So if we integrate this from 0 to a thickness of y, the time will be integrating from where? 0 to t. Okay, so here everything else is a constant, so they will come out Kt by rho L, that will be a constant. Integral dt means what? That will be t, so t minus 0, that is equal to integral y dy is what? Y square by 2. So y square by 2 minus 0 square by 2, that is anyway what? Y square by 2. So the time that is required for the formation of a thickness y is what? So we will just take everything to the other side. What is it? Rho L y square by 2 kt. So this is what is the time that is required. So starting from, so if you have the water starting from the 0 thickness, if you are looking at the formation of ice block of thickness y, for that and you know the outside temperature is minus T and the water temperature we are taking it as what? 0. The time that is required for the formation of a thickness y is what? Rho L y square by 2 kt. So this is a very important result about the formation of ice on the ponds. Now similarly, like you know, we talked about the conduction of heat through a rod of uniform cross section, isn't it? So we talked about the conduction of heat through a rod of uniform cross section. But we can also have cases like this, the idea of radial conduction. Radial conduction means we will look at the conduction through the what do we call as the radial direction. So if we have the surface with an a radius r1 which is maintained at temperature T1, starting from there the heat is radially getting conducted through the outer surface which is having a radius r2, and the temperature is maintained at what? T2. So if h is the conduction rate, or also we call as what? The conduction power, then you know we are not going through the derivation here, we will just look at the final result. The formula for thermal conductivity, so thermal conductivity will be what? It will be equal to h into r2 minus r1 by 4 pi r1 r2 into T1 minus T2. So T1 is the high temperature, T2 is the low temperature. Okay, and R2 will be the outer surface radius, R1 is the inner surface radius. So this is about the expression that relates the what is this h here? H is the conduction power. So this is the formula that relates conduction power in radial direction to thermal conductivity of the material and the geometrical parameters and temperatures. Okay. Now this is another important result. If you have a rod of variable cross section, like you know we have a radius of cross section here r1 and over here it is what? R2. The length of the rod is L and let's say the temperature, temperature of the two ends are what? Theta1 and theta2. We can take, you know, this is the hot and this is the cold. Obviously what happens, the heat will be moving from the hot end to the cold end. So here remember, you know, whenever we talk about the conduction current, we can talk about the similarity between the conduction current to the electric current. So if you look at the thermal resistance R value, because if you know the thermal resistance means what is the conduction current or conduction power formula? Conduction power formula will be equal to what? the temperature difference by thermal resistance. That's it, right? So the thermal resistance value R for this rod of variable cross section, right, will be L by pi K into R1 R2. So L is the length, K is the thermal conductivity value, R1 R2 are what? The radius of cross section of both the ends. So this is about the, what is this? This is the thermal resistance. So using the thermal resistance, right, we can find what is the conduction power or conduction current basically. Okay. So this is another special case. So these are the special cases in terms of the conduction. Now talking about the application of the conduction, or rather the idea of conduction, right? There are some cases where we will prefer to have good thermal conduction, and some cases we will prefer to have a poor thermal conduction. Like if you look at the bed clothing or the quilt, right? So the new ones that we buy, one thing is, okay, they will be made up of cotton, which is a poor conductor of heat, but the new bed clothing will have a lot of these air gaps. Okay, so the pores, right, basically will not allow a better conduction of heat. As a result, what we will be able to feel, we will be able to feel lot more warmth. So that's the reason why, I mean, so if you are using a new quilt, right, you will feel more warm than using the old one. Why? Because these air traps, they will prevent the conduction of heat. That's one thing. And even if you look at the transportation of ice, this is very common that we will see. We will put sawdust on top of the ice. Means basically we will cover the ice cubes or ice blocks with the sawdust, and that's how ice is generally transported from one place to other place. So why do we do it? Again, sawdust is a poor conductor of heat, that is one. On top of it, you can see here, like the sawdust, so it will not be a very close packing. There will be air that will be trapped inside, and that will make it even more poor conductor of the heat. As a result, there will be no exchange of heat between the ice and the surrounding, because surrounding is at high temperature. The surrounding is at high temperature, right? The ice is at low temperature. If there is a proper conduction of heat, means by the time we transport from one place to other place, the ice would have melted. But that does not happen. So the sawdust along with these air that is trapped will prevent the conduction of heat from the surrounding to the ice, because always the idea is heat will flow from high temperature to low temperature, correct? Now the other thing is, this is something that we will observe in winter. Like if you go and hold the metallic handle, right, so you will feel that it is appearing to be cold, whereas when you touch the wooden door, so both are let's say for example both are facing outside. Ideal thing is what? When you touch them, you should feel the same temperature. That is what we think. But what we will generally observe is if you touch the metallic handle, we will see that it will be colder. Whereas the wooden door, right, you will not feel that much cold. So why does it happen? It is because when we touch this metallic handle, right, the heat will flow from our body to the handle. So because metal is a good conductor, right, it's a good conductor of both heat as well as electric current. Whereas when it comes to the wooden door, it is a poor conductor of heat, because it is a bad conductor of heat. Heat will not flow from our body to the wood. That's why we will not be able to feel that much cold. Okay, so this is about the experience that we have when we touch the wooden door vis-a-vis the metallic handle of the door. So these are some of the applications of the conduction. Now what we will do is we will move on from, so this is like the first part. So you can see on top of it, right, we put the heading 1. So this is the first mode of heat transfer. Now from here we will jump to the second one. What is second one? It is the convection. So remember the example that we have given in the very beginning. What is it? The person who is keeping hands on top of the fire, the air layer getting heated will move up because of the decrease of the density, isn't it? So there is an actual movement of the particles. So it is the process by which heat will flow from one region to the other region Generally, how it will flow? High temperature region to low temperature region by the actual movement of the particles of medium. So we will take a beautiful example for this. Look at it. When you are heating water in a vessel, let's see how beautifully the convection concept will be explained by this. What do we generally do? We will put the fire below the vessel. So look at this. The vessel will get heated, and the layer of water molecules that are just next to that vessel bottom, they will get heated. Now when they get heated, what is going to happen? Their density will be decreasing. So density decreasing means what? They will be raising up, because always the gravity effect is what? The effect of gravity is the one that will have a high density will come down, and the one that will have a low density will go up, isn't it? So due to the effect of gravity, these layer of water molecules that have got the heat are now having lesser density, so they will move up, and a bunch of other molecules, they will occupy that place. You can see, we are putting a path like this. It's as if, the low density is raising up and other particles are coming and settling at that place. Now one round is over, right? Now this layer also will get heated. That will also raise another layer. So as a result, what we see is the layers of water molecules that are getting heat, they will rise, and the colder ones, they will come and settle. They will absorb the heat from the metals or the vessel surface. Then they will also be rising because of the decrease of density. So what is happening? The idea is very simple. Here the gravity is driving the actual motion of particles. We are not doing anything. That is the reason why this kind of convection, right, is also called as free convection. So just keep this in mind. In free convection, right, what drives this actual, because we require actual movement of particles to carry the heat. The actual movement of particles is driven by what? Gravity. How? The layer of particles, in this case we are discussing about the layer of water particles. They get heated means their density will decrease. So they will rise. Another colder layer will come down. This will repeat. And you'll see one beauty thing. The reason why we keep the fire always at the bottom is also because of the same reason. So if you are heating the water from sidewise, right, the heating will not be that much effective. Only when you heat it from the bottom, it will be effective. Why? Because when you heat it from the bottom, that is when the layer that is heated will rise and another layer will come. So this is the most effective way of heating water, where we keep the fire or the source of the heat at the bottom. And this is about the free convection. So just because we are discussing about the convection, here if you want to talk about what is the rate of heat transfer through convection. So this study is a little bit complicated, but what we'll do is we'll just take a look at what is the very basic idea. So the rate of heat transfer here also, let's say this surface is having a T and this is having a temperature T dash. So definitely it will be proportional to what? The temperature difference between we can call it as on the boundary. One side the temperature is T, other side the temperature is what? T dash. So it will be directly proportional to what? The temperature difference. That is one. Second thing is it will be also directly proportional to what? Area. Means we have more area means more amount of heat can transfer through convection. And we will see some of the applications of this. So the concept of free convection or natural convection, right? What is it? It is driven by the gravity. So the layer of particles, as we explained it, right, they get heated means their density will decrease, so they will be rising, and another cold layer of particles which are having a higher density, they will occupy the previous position, and this keeps repeating. Okay, so here the thing is, we talked about the equation, right? So we can put this in the form of an equation. So what is it? The rate of heat transfer through convection, right? What is the thing that we said? It is proportional to area and proportional to what? Temperature difference between the two layers. Okay, now we can always make this into an equation. So here the constant that is used will be little bit different. Remember, in case of conduction, right, we used thermal conductivity K, which is what is it that we talked about it? We said it is a property of the material, like iron will have a value of K, copper will have a value of K, like that. But here this value of H will depend upon so many factors, including the force that is driving the convection. So what do you mean by this? Here, when we talk about the force that is driving the convection, right, what is the force? It is the gravity. That's the reason why we are calling it as what? Free convection or natural convection. We are not doing anything by ourselves. So the value of H will be 1. I mean, let's not talk about what is the exact value of H. But if you go to the next mode of convection, so we'll talk about that also, which we'll be calling as the forced convection. There we will use some external force. We'll see that the value of H will be different. So if you talk about another example of the free convection or natural convection, right? So like the coffee, if you keep it in the open, what do you observe? We'll observe that the layer of air particles. So here what is it? The layer of air particles, they will absorb the heat from the hot coffee. They will raise up, because when they are getting heated means their density will decrease. Now as they are raising up, the position is taken by what? Another layer of air molecules will occupy the place. They will get heated and so on. This repeats. So again the same thing. What is it? The rate of heat transfer, right, is directly proportional to area and proportional to temperature difference. Temperature difference here means what? T is the coffee temperature and T dash is what? The surrounding temperature here. So one thing that we can notice is directly proportional to area. So when you put the coffee or tea in a saucer, right? So what is it that will happen? Think of it. So when you put this in a saucer means what is it that is going to happen? So when you put the coffee or tea in a saucer, what will happen? The area will increase. When you increase the area, what is going to happen? The rate of heat transfer through convection will increase, which means the coffee or tea will become cooler easily, or it will become cooler fast, because now the rate of heat transfer is rapid. Instead, if it is in the cup only, right, then it will take a little bit longer time for cooling. So if you want to have a coffee or a tea by making it to cool in a very quick time, right, what is it that we will do? We will put the coffee or tea in the saucer, so that it will become cool easily and we will be able to quickly have it. Okay, so this is about and if you are storing any hot liquid in a vessel that is having a very small opening, think of it. So there is a vessel with a very small opening. So what will happen as a result of it? That opening is what is the exposure, right? The area. If the opening is small means what? The rate of heat transfer through convection also will be what? Less. So the liquid, the hot liquid that is inside will take longer time to cool, isn't it? So it will take longer time to basically cool. So if you want to store a hot liquid, right, you will store it in such a way that the area of exposure will be what? Less. And of course, I mean, we will not store a hot liquid in a normal vessel like this. We'll see, usually we'll call it as what? The thermos flask, right, that is used to store the hot liquid. We'll see how that will work when we go there, but this is the idea. So when you increase the surface area, then the rate of convection will be what? Higher. And we talked about the natural convection. Let's talk about what is the forced convection. Like you have a iron object which is heated, maybe 700 degrees Celsius or whatever, it is heat. Okay, normally what will happen? On top of this there will be the layer of air molecules. They will absorb the heat and they will be raising because the density will decrease, and that is the natural convection. But sidewise, if you put some fan and keep blowing the air, think of it, what will happen? Sideways, if you keep some fan and keep blowing the air, what will happen? It's like these air molecules, right? They will be forcibly blown away. Previously, due to the natural convection, if it is taking some time for the layer to absorb the heat and then raise. Now, since there is a fan that is kept sideways and the air molecules are forcibly blown away, what we will be observing is the rate of heat transfer will become higher. Obviously, we are not allowing the gravity alone to do the job. We are keeping some external force to drive these layer of air molecules. So another layer will come, that also will be driven, another layer will come, like this. It keeps happening. So through forced convection, right, generally what is our objective? What is the objective? To enhance the convection rate. Remember, the previous I gave the equation, right? The rate of heat transfer through convection. So remember, what is the equation we have seen? Rate of heat transfer, right, through convection is equal to what is it? H. Okay, so H is a constant into A into, we can say, delta T, temperature difference. So this H, we can call it as what? Convection constant. As I said, it will also depend upon what is the type of convection, in the sense, what force is driving the convection. So generally, what do we say? If we talk about the forced convection, means what? H value will be higher. In case of forced convection, H value will be higher. And not only that, if you increase the speed of the fan, the air layers will be blown away more faster, right? So as a result, what is going to happen? The H value will even more increase. Okay, so this is about the free convection and forced convection. Okay, now let us look at some of the applications of the convection. So we have some applications of convection that will happen naturally, and one very important thing in that is the land and sea breeze. So what is this land and sea breeze? When we look at the behavior of the earth and water, or rather land and water. So they said we have a land and they said we have water. They behave differently when it comes to heat. Land will be able to get heated fast, and also it will cool fast. So during the daytime, the land is heated fast. So as a result, what happens? The air which is near the land, that will be heated, right? So its density will decrease, so it will go up. So here what? This is like, so low pressure situation here. So the air will come over the sea, the breeze, that's why we call it as our sea breeze. It is coming over the sea. So it is coming over the sea and reaching the land. To complete the cycle, whatever the heated air molecule is, right, they will go the other way around. That will complete the cycle. Okay. So since we see the breeze coming over the sea, that's why it is called as what? Sea breeze. So why is it happening? During the daytime, the lands get heated fast, and that's what is giving the sea breeze. Now during the night time, the land would have become cool, but the sea is still hot comparatively. So the layer of air molecules above the sea will go up. So here we will see the air current exactly in the opposite direction. So when they go up, means here it is, now this is the low pressure, right? This is the low pressure part. So we will see that air molecules will come from land side to the sea side. That's why we call it as what? Land breeze. To complete the cycle, in the upper layer it will be the other way around. The movement, it will be a cycle. So during the daytime, what do we have? Sea breeze. Why? Because land is at high temperature, or we can say land is warmer than the water. During the night time, what do we observe? Land breeze. Why? Water is basically warmer than the land. So why is it happening? Basically, we can say earth or land heats up easily and also cools faster. Okay, so this is about the sea breeze and land breeze. Now the other natural applications of the convection is what we call as the trade wind. So trade winds happen because when look at the heat coming from the sun, it will not reach to each and every part of the earth uniformly. Generally the region near the equator, right? So you can see here that will be the hotter region, more amount of heat will reach there. So as a result, what happens? The air molecules there, they will get heated up, they will rise, and the polar region will be the one that will receive lesser amount of heat. So like the way we have seen, right, the air current should come from pole side to the equator. Near the surface of the earth, it will be a cycle. Upper layer, what will happen? The cycle will be completed. This should happen on either side of the equator. This should be happening on either side of the equator. So this is what we can call as the Hadley cell. Now the trade winds are affected by the Earth's rotation. So generally what is expected? The dip, we can say, when the upper layer, it should be dipping where exactly at the polar region. So here also it should dip where? At the polar region. Starting from the equator, it should be dipping at the polar region. But because of the Earth's rotation effect, right, the dip will not happen at the polar region. The dip will happen somewhere else. So if you look at it, right, so where is the dip happening? Either at 30 degrees north or 30 degrees south, because we will have one Hadley cell on the upper, one Hadley cell on the lower hemisphere, isn't it? So the dip will not be happening at the polar region, but it will be happening at where? One 30 degrees north side, another 30 degrees south. But why this Hadley cell is occurring? Because of the, again, the fact that the heat from sun will not reach to each and every part of the earth uniformly. Near equator we will get more amount of heat. You can see in the diagram, right, it shows how more amount of heat is coming. But theoretically what must happen? If the earth is static, right, the Hadley cell, air current should dip at the polar region on either side. But because of the rotation of the earth, the dip will get altered. So the dip will happen exactly at what? Either 30 degrees north, 30 degrees south. Okay, so this is about the trade winds. Now we have seen the convection. Before that we talked about the conduction. The third mode of heat transfer is the radiation. Okay, let's say when we want to talk about the radiation part, if there is an object and Q is the amount of thermal energy incident of the object. So we are incidenting an amount Q on that object. Okay, and what will happen to this heat? A part R is reflected. It's basically what reflected. Generally what do we know? Polished surfaces reflect better. Rough surfaces, they will not reflect more. Okay, white will reflect better, dark will not reflect much. A is the absorbed part. So in that, a part of it is being what? Absorbed. So A is the part of it that is being absorbed. And T is the part that is transmitted. Transmitted means what? If it is connected to something in the surroundings. The T part is basically what? Transmitted. Now as per the energy balance, right, because what is heat? It's a form of energy, isn't it? As per the energy balance, what you can say? The reflected part plus absorbed part plus transmitted. That will be equal to what? Simply Q. If you divide on either side with Q, right, look at what happens. It will be what? R by Q, it will be A by Q, it will be T by Q. The total value of this will be equal to what? 1. Okay, so I'll tell you what is the significance of each of these terms. R by Q is what? The fraction of heat that is reflected. A by Q is what? The fraction of heat that is being absorbed. T by Q is what? The fraction of heat that is being transmitted. Okay, so if you cut off the object from everywhere else, like we isolate it, then the transmission part will become what? 0, because we cut it off from everything, means it will not be able to transmit to anything else. Okay, so that is how these values can actually change. Now, this R by Q, right, is what we will be calling as reflectance, small r. A by Q is what we call as the absorptance, small a. T by Q is what we call as the transmittance, which is small t. Okay, now as I said before, if you cut off the object from everything else, then the transmittance part will become what? 0. Okay, now in our discussion, right, when we talk about the radiation, we will keep referring to a hypothetical object or a theoretical object, which is what we will be calling it as a black body. So what is a black body? It's a hypothetical or theoretical object which will perform in a particular manner, and that's what we will be calling as the black body behavior. Okay, so we will see what is it that is special about the black body. So body, it's neither reflecting, means what? Reflectance value will be 0, nor transmitting, means what? Transmittance value also will be 0. Small r 0, small t 0, which means what? Only it will be absorbing all the heat that is falling on it, means the absorptance value will be equal to what? 1. Such a body is what we will be calling as the black body. So what is a black body? What is it? It will be having A equal to 1, R equal to 0, and T is equal to what? 0. No reflection, no transmission, just complete absorption. That is what is the black body. Now the reason why we said it is a theoretical concept is, anything that we can think of, right, there will be some amount of reflection, there will be some amount of transmission. We can't cut off from everything else. So that is the reason why we said this is a theoretical concept, the idea of a black body. And we will even see what are some of the close approximations for the black body, like that we will discuss. Okay. Now talking about the black body, a perfect black body is the one that will be able to absorb all the radiation that is incident on it. So Ferri has designed what can be called as a near black body, where if you take a object which is made up of a hollow copper, it's like a hollow copper sphere, and that is coated with a lamp black inside. So inside it is coated with a lamp black. So lamp black will be able to absorb the heat, and even the inner surface, right, will be made as much uneven as possible. There will be a small hole through which the radiation will be allowed in, and exactly on the other side, facing right to the hole, you will have a pointed projection. Just in front of the hole, you will have a pointed projection. So what it will do is, any radiation coming in, it will reflect. And inside, since it will be uneven, the radiation will undergo multiple reflections inside. Every time it is reflecting, right, because it is coated with lamp black, there will be more absorption. So in a way, for the radiation to come out, it can only come out through that same hole, and the chance for that to happen will be very, very less. So as a result, what is going to happen? The radiation is undergoing multiple reflections inside, and as much as will be absorbed. So this is the Ferri's idea of what can be seen as a theoretical black body. Now when we look at the radiation as such, right, we know radiation is the means by which we will get the energy from the sun. So the radiation means what? It's going to be in the form of electromagnetic waves. So electromagnetic waves and the entire spectrum, right, electromagnetic spectrum, we will learn about this in +2. In fact, we'll have a full chapter on electromagnetic waves, where we'll talk about, what are the different components of the spectrum and so on and so forth. So what we see is visible is only one part of the spectrum. Other than that, you have ultraviolet, infrared, X-ray, gamma rays, and so all these things are there. Okay, we'll talk about all of them later. But an electromagnetic wave, right, a bit of an understanding we have about them through the chemistry structure of the atom. We have studied about the Planck's quantum theory. So in that we have got little bit idea about the electromagnetic radiation, how it will carry. So we'll talk about in that we'll talk about the quantum theory of electromagnetic radiation. Okay, but electromagnetic waves will consist of oscillating electric field and magnetic field along perpendicular directions, where the wave will propagate in another perpendicular direction. Okay, so we'll learn about them in detail in as I said, +2 electromagnetic wave chapter. But here the important point is when you are comparing between these different modes of heat transfer, right? Conduction requires a medium. A convection, there is actually movement of particles to carry the heat. Radiation do not require a medium for the propagation. We are able to clearly see it, right? Even through space it can come. And in conduction, remember when we talk about the conduction through a metal rod or like that, you have a hot end, you have a cold end. Okay. So then what we mentioned that there will be a temperature profile that will be built. So the high temperature, hot temperature to cold temperature, the through the rod we will have a temperature profile that will be built. So over a period, what is happening is the entire rod is getting heated up to different degree of temperature, isn't it? So which means the intervening medium is getting heated because of the heat transfer mechanism. But when the radiation is happening, the intervening medium will not get heated up. Like even when we have light that is going through air, it's not like air is going to get heated up. So the intervening medium will not get heated up because of the transmission of the radiation. Okay. And we have seen clearly in case of conduction what happens when we say temperature profile is built, means the medium is getting heated up. Correct. Now talking about the law of radiation, because we talked about the law of conduction, and we also have seen how the convection or the rate of convection will depend upon, or rather in what parameters the rate of convection will depend upon. Now for the radiation rate, the Stephen-Boltzmann law will give an idea of how a perfect black body will be able to radiate. So perfect black body, the rate of emission of energy per unit area will be directly proportional to the fourth power of absolute temperature of the surface. So we have a body. So we will take the body to be like a black body. Let's say T is the surface temperature. Then the energy that is radiated per unit time, per unit area, that is proportional to what? T to the power of 4. So if you call this energy per time as the radiation power, and represent this with say for example a symbol E. So here we are using E to indicate what? The symbol radiation power. So E indicates, let's say we will say E indicates what? Radiation power. So one thing we can clearly see that E will be directly proportional to what? T power 4. Not only that, you take the area to the other side, what we will say? E will be also proportional to area. When we club both of them, right, what we can see? E proportional to A T power 4. We will make this into equation. So E will be equal to what? Sigma A T to the power of 4. The sigma, right, is what we will call as the Stephen's constant. And the value of sigma will be 5.67 in 10 power 8 watt per meter square into Kelvin power 4. So remember, the unit value as well as dimensional formula. Quite a number of times we got questions on the particular Stephen's constant unit as well as dimensional formula. So what is the formula that we need to remember? The radiation power of a black body. What is the radiation power formula for the black body? The radiation power will be equal to what? Sigma A T to the power of 4. So here what is this area? A is what? The surface area. A indicates surface area of the black body, and T indicates what? The surface temperature on the Kelvin scale. Okay, so this is about the radiation power given by the black body as per the Stephen-Boltzmann law. But what about a normal ordinary object? For an ordinary object, right, we will indicate how an ordinary object will radiate, the relation of it to the radiation given by a identical black body, by using this parameter called as emissivity. So emissivity, we can just indicate this with the symbol E. So emissivity basically talks about, let's say for example, we have a black body. So maybe I should have put this in black color, but anyway, so we have a black body, and we have a identical, all the geometrical parameters are identical a normal object. Okay. So if you look at the radiation power of the black body, and you look at what is the radiation power of the normal object. Okay. So the ratio of radiation power of the normal object and the ratio of the radiation power of the normal object to the radiation power of the identical black body. That ratio rate is what we call as emissivity. So in a way, what we can conclude from here, so whenever we want to represent the radiation power of a normal body, right? So the radiation power of a normal body will be equal to what? Just we have to take it to the other side. It will be what? E into E is called as what? Emissivity. A radiation power of an identical black body. So what is the formula for radiation power of a black body? Sigma A T power 4, isn't it? So we will get what? E times sigma A T power. Otherwise we can write it like this: sigma E A T to the power of 4. So here the thing that we need to note is the emissivity, the range of values the emissivity can take. So if you talk about a black body itself, for a black body itself means what is the value of emissivity? 1. Because the normal object will emit just like the black body, right? So the emissivity will be 1 for a black body, and emissivity will be 0 if an object is not radiating anything. Then the emissivity value will be equal to what? 0. So the range of emissivity value will be from 0 to 1. So this is the range of emissivity value. Okay, so this is about the radiation power of a normal object. Okay, now when we are looking at any object, right? Let's say for example in a room we keep a object inside the room. Now inside the room it's not like we have only that object, other things are also there, isn't it? Inside the room we have the other things also. Now what happens is, what we are thinking is, okay, this object is going to radiate. Yes, that is correct. So the radiation energy will be going out of the object. At the same time, what is going to happen? There will be also radiation that will be incident on the object. The radiation given by the other objects, right, will be incident on it. Other things in that room will radiate. So that will be falling on the object, which means when we want to look at what kind of heat change an object will have through radiation, we should talk about the net radiation power. What we should talk about? We should talk about the net radiation power. So think of it. Okay. So if we have an object with a surface temperature T and surrounding, let's say, identical temperature T naught, then the radiation power emitted, assuming this is like a black body, so radiation power emitted will be what? Sigma A T power 4. The radiation power that is incident on the object. So from where it is getting incident? The other things you can see here, the objects or whatever it is in the surrounding, they will be emitting radiation, right? That radiation will be coming and falling on the surface of the object. The incident radiation on that object will be, how much area is there? Area value A. And what is the temperature of the surrounding? It is T naught, let's say, uniform temperature. So it will be what? Sigma A T naught power 4. Now emission, incident. So the net radiation power will be equal to what? Whatever is going out minus we have to do whatever is coming in. That is what will be the net radiation power that is emitted. So what is it? It will be sigma A T power 4 minus sigma A T naught power 4 will come. So what is it? It will be, if you take sigma into A common out, what is it? It will be T power 4 minus T naught power 4. So this is a simple formula for the net radiation power that is emitted. So this is what is a simple formula for the net radiation power that is emitted by an object. So why are we saying it is a simple formula? Because we are assuming that the surrounding is all uniform. That is the reason why we are saying it is a simple formula. What is the final formula? Sigma A into T power 4 minus T naught power 4. Okay, so this is one more extension to the Stephen-Boltzmann law. Now here we can see from this formula itself, right, when we say net radiation power is sigma A into T power 4 minus T naught power 4, what is the conclusion here? If T is more than T naught, means what? The net radiation power is coming as what? It will be coming positive. Means the object is net radiating out. Okay. If T is less than T naught means what? Net there is more incidence. Means the object is not, net value radiation is not there. What is there? There is a net value of absorption of heat due to the radiation from the surrounding. Okay, so this is another important conclusion we can look at from this. So only when the temperature of the body is more than the surrounding temperature, we will see there will be net radiation that will be emitted by the object. Otherwise the net radiation will be what? Absorbed. Okay, so this is about the Stephen-Boltzmann law. And one more law relating to the radiation given by an object. Like if you talk about self-illuminating object like a sun or any star for that matter, or any object which is heated, the radiation will be coming in the form of, as we said, it will be coming in the form of the electromagnetic waves. Electromagnetic waves means what? We'll talk about the to understand better about them, we'll talk about the wavelength of these radiation. Like we can have a series of wavelength values that are emitted. Even in the structure of atom, our chemistry, right, we'll talk about for the emission spectrum of hydrogen, right, the Lyman series, Balmer series and all these things, you would have seen the formulas, how you will get the formulas for the lambda values. Okay, we don't need to go there and all, but here we will talk about the heat perspective. When you see the heat that is radiated, it will be distributed across these wavelengths that are emitted. Now we can talk about what is the intensity of radiation given by each wavelength value. So each of these wavelengths, right, of course we will not have discrete values, we will have a continuous range of values, but we can plot how the intensity of the radiation is distributed with respect to the wavelength values that are present in the radiation. So when you try to plot it, right, so this is how we will get the plot. Let's just talk about the object temperature being what is it? 5500 Kelvin. That is the temperature which we maintain for the object. Now you will see here that there is a particular value of lambda where the intensity rate is picking up or maximum. This is what we will be calling as lambda m. Lambda subscript m is what? The wavelength that will correspond to the maximum intensity of radiation given. The wavelength that will correspond to maximum intensity of the radiation given. Okay. Now, if you maintain the temperature of the object to be 5000 Kelvin, you can see the lambda m will be slightly different. If you maintain the body temperature to be 4500, the lambda m will be what? Different. If you maintain the body temperature to be 3500, the lambda m will be what? Different. So what is the conclusion from here is there are actually two conclusions. First thing is, when you look at what is the relation between the temperature of the body and the lambda m value, that is what we will try to understand through the Wien's displacement law. So what is the Wien's displacement law? It's a very straightforward law. It basically relates the temperature of the body with the lambda m. So the wavelength that is corresponding to the maximum emission, lambda m, into T will be a constant. The constant is what we will call as the Wien's constant. So what is the Wien's constant value? Approximately it will be 3 into 10 power minus 3 meter into Kelvin. So again I am saying Stephen's constant, Wien's constant. Just be careful, the units as well as the dimensional formula. Okay. So meter into Kelvin means what? Meter means L, Kelvin means what? Theta. That's the dimensional formula for the Wien's constant. Okay. Now here the thing that we need to keep in mind is the T temperature must be in the absolute scale always. It should not be on the Celsius scale, it should be always on the absolute scale. Okay, so if you look at this formula, right, what we can see, as the temperature is increasing, right, the wavelength that is corresponding to the maximum emission, lambda m value must decrease. Vice versa. If temperature is decreasing means, so look at this now, if temperature is decreasing means what? Lambda m value will be increasing. Now we'll just go one step back and check from the diagram. Look at this. So what is the conclusion here? As the temperature is increasing, I want you to just mark the lambda m values. For 3500 this is the lambda m. For 4000 this is it is. 4500 here it is. 5000 it is. So as temperature is increasing, you can clearly see lambda m is what? Decreasing. That's fine. So this is, the Wien's displacement law. And there is one more thing. When you look at heating an object, what we will generally observe is the color of the object is changing. This is something that we can notice. Like, even normally when you take an iron rod and then start heating it, we can see that the color will be changing. And if you are heating it over a wide range of temperature means, we can see color clearly making the shift. So what is observed when we talk about the temperature of a black body with the color that is given? So initially we will see that the color will be red. This is something that you can observe with an heating of the iron rod also. Then it will become what? Orange. Then it will become what? Yellow. Then it shows green. Then it shows blue. Then it shows violet. Why? Again same logic. Just go back to the previous visualization. We can see the idea is very simple. What is it? As the temperature is increasing, the wavelength corresponding to maximum intensity will be what? Decreasing. So low temperature means what? The maximum intensity lambda value will be what? High. That's the reason why initially low temperature, right, will have red, because remember what is it? What is the order? Webber, right? The wavelength will be what? Increasing. So highest lambda will be for red. So initially we'll have red, then slowly we'll turn into orange, then yellow. Finally we'll go where? Violet. This is what we can see with our naked eye. Okay, so why is it happening? Because as the temperature is increasing, lambda value decreases. This is one more the observation that we do, and that's also relating to what? The application of the Wien's displacement law. Okay, now we'll just look at one sample question. So there is a black body with maximum wavelength lambda value which is at 2000 Kelvin. We have to find what is the corresponding wavelength. Corresponding wavelength means we have to find the wavelength with the maximum intensity of the emitted radiation. For what temperature? 3000 Kelvin. So what is the thing that we know? Initially lambda m into the temperature on the Kelvin scale, 2000 Kelvin, is equal to what? The Wien's constant B. This is like equation 1. Second thing is what? Lambda m dash. The second case. Now the temperature is what? 3000 Kelvin. That is also equal to what? B. Both are same, right? So equate both of them. What we will get? Lambda m into 2000 is equal to what? Lambda m dash into 3000. That's it. We are looking for the lambda m dash. So what is it? Bring the 3 to the left side. 2 by 3 into lambda m is equal to what? Lambda m dash. So what is the answer for this? It is option B. Check it. So just as it is, we are applying the Wien's displacement law. That's it. Nothing more. Now when you talk about the source of energy for the earth or any planet in the solar system for that matter, what is it? It is the sun. It is the radiation coming from the sun, right? So if you take the surface radius of the sun to be r subscript s, and the mean distance, because we know the earth, already we have seen in the gravitation, right? Earth will not go in a circular path, it will go in the elliptical path. So because we are dealing with a simple case here, we will say the mean distance is what? Small r. Mean distance from the center of the sun to the earth is what? Small r. Now the definition of what is a solar constant. Okay, so it's a very simple thing. If you take unit surface area on the earth, what is the amount of radiation power that is incident on the earth? Now where is it coming from? Of course it is coming from the sun. So in simple, what is it? It is the radiant energy that is falling per unit area on the earth per 1 second. Basically radiation power per unit area. That is what we will be calling as the solar constant. Now if you look at how do we measure it, think of it. Where is the radiation starting from? It is starting from the sun, right? The radiation is basically starting from the sun. So what we will do is we will first look at what is the radiation power given by the sun. So what is the radiation power given by the sun? Assuming it is like a black body. What is the formula? Sigma A T power 4. What is the area? Surface area means what? For the sun, what is surface area? 4 pi into Rs the square. So this is what the radiation power given by the sun. Now this is coming and falling when it is reaching to the mean distance of the earth. When it is reaching to that much distance, right? On how much area it will be falling, you just check it. On how much area it will be falling? It will be falling on an area of how much? 4 pi r square. The radiation power starting from sun will be totally falling on how much area? 4 pi r square. So if you want to put it right, the solar constant will be what? The radiation power given by the sun divided by the total surface area we will have on which the radiation is falling at the distance which is equal to mean distance between sun and earth. So what is it? 4 pi rs square into sigma t power 4 by 4 pi small r square. So this is getting cancelled. So what is it that we will have? Rs by r the whole square into sigma t power 4. Now when we substitute the corresponding values, because here the things are known to us, right? So when we substitute the values, then we will get what is the value of the solar constant. Okay. So what is solar constant? We will get the value. I mean, we can just make a note of it. The value will be approximately 1.937 calorie per centimeter square per minute. This is a common unit. This is a common unit for the solar constant. Yes. If you want, we can even change it into SI unit and then check the value. But the idea of solar constant is what? The radiation power falling per unit area at a distance which is equal to mean distance from the sun to the earth. Okay. So in fact, there is one more statement. We should have added the word normal. The radiation power should be incident normal to the surface. Okay. So this is about the concept of solar constant. Now when we look at, say for example, any object which we are keeping outside, like this vessel in which we are keeping a hot water, what you will observe is there is a convection happening, isn't it? And there is a conduction, and there will be of course the radiation. So it's not like you will have only one mechanism of heat transfer. There will be a combination. So generally when you take a hot body and keep it outside, what we'll observe is the body will be getting cooled, and that's what is studied through the Newton's law of cooling. So a hot body, when we study how it is getting cooled, when we are placing it in the outside, right, the cooling behavior is what we will study through the Newton's law of cooling. So the main thing about the Newton's law of cooling is, if say the temperature of the body is theta, as we saying that it is a hot body, the temperature keeps on decreasing. D theta will be what? It will be negative. Why? Because we are only saying the temperature will be decreasing, right? So minus d theta will be the temperature decreased value. If it is happening in a time dt, then minus d theta by dt, right? That is what we can call as the rate of cooling. So what is observed is this rate of cooling, right, minus d theta by dt. Why we have to put minus means because d theta will be negative. The rate of cooling is directly proportional to temperature difference between the object and the surrounding. So if say for example surrounding temperature is theta naught, object temperature is theta, then rate of cooling is directly proportional to what? The temperature difference between the object and the surrounding. Means when the temperature difference is more, rate of cooling will be more, means the object will cool faster. When the temperature difference is less, then rate of cooling is what? Less, means the object will be cooling slow. So we can convert this into an equation. because whenever we have a proportional relation, we can convert this into equation, right? What is it? We can write it like this: minus d theta by dt is equal to what? Some constant c into theta minus theta naught. Don't bother too much about what is the constant, because anyway the Newton's law of cooling problems that we deal with, right, we will have the constant getting cancelled out or the constant getting eliminated. Okay, so this is what we will call as the differential form of the Newton's law of cooling. This is what we call as a differential form. We have one more form, that is the average form. The second form is basically the average form. So the average form is, yes, when we are looking at an object, this is the instantaneous rate of cooling. So in a way, what we can say, this is the formula for the instantaneous rate of cooling. We can talk about the average. Average means what? Let's say the object is starting from initial temperature theta I, finally coming to what? Theta f. So the average formula will be what? Minus delta theta by delta t is equal to, in place of here we will get a constant. The temperature of the body means, here temperature of the body is not a constant value, it is itself changing, rate from initial temperature to final temperature. So we will take the average value of the temperature of the body. That's what we call as theta average. So theta average of the body minus theta naught. So this is what we call as the Newton's law of cooling average formula. So this is the instantaneous rate of cooling, this is the average rate of cooling formula. So most of the times we may get questions, JEE mains level, we may get questions based on the average cooling formula. Sometimes in advanced level, we may even get questions relating to what? The instantaneous rate of cooling formula. So that's it. Okay, so this is about the Newton's law of cooling. So here we are not getting into what are the exact methods of heat transfer involved. We are just looking at the rate of cooling and then trying to come up with the relation between the rate of cooling to temperature of the body and temperature of the surroundings. That's it. Okay. Now we'll just look at a sample question on that. Certain quantity of water is cooling from 70 degrees Celsius to 60 in first 5 minutes. And then to 54, means first to come down from 70 to 60, how much time it is taking? 5 minutes. Now from 60 to finally where it has to come to 54, it is taking again 5 minutes. The temperature of the surrounding is how much? So here, the time is measurable, which means what? We have to use the average formula. So what is the average formula? Minus delta theta by delta t is equal to what? C into the average temperature of the body minus surrounding temperature. That's it, right? So first step, 70 to 60 it is coming, means minus delta theta means what? Final temperature is 60, initially 70, delta theta means minus 10 by time is what? 5 minutes is equal to C into theta average. Theta average is what? 70 plus 60 by 2 means 65 minus theta naught. That is what we need to find, right? So what is it? 10 by 5 means 2. 2 is equal to C into 65 minus theta naught. Let us call it as equation 1. Then we will come to equation 2, the second part. From 60 it is cooling all the way to 54. Means that delta theta will be what? 54 minus 60 means minus 6. So minus of minus 6 by 5 is equal to what? C into theta average means what? 60 plus 54 divided by 2, that is 57. So C into 57 minus theta naught. So we can see here what is this basically? 6 by 5 is equal to what? C into 57 minus theta naught. That's it. This is our second equation. So basically what we are doing, two cases are given, we are writing the equation for both case 1 and case 2. Now what is the thing we will see? We will just because in this, let us just erase everything else. We will try to focus on these two equations. We get two equations here. We have to get the value of theta naught. That's it, right? What is our task? To get the value of theta naught. So how do we get it? From equation 1, what is the value of C? C will be equal to what? 2 by 65 minus theta naught. Take this and substitute in equation 2. What is equation 2? 6 by 5 is equal to, in place of C, what will come? 2 by 65 minus theta naught into 57 minus theta naught. Okay. So now we are just with what? One equation. This equation we have to solve to get the theta naught value. That's it. So here what we have to do? We have to do first cross multiplication, right? Now it's more about basic math. We just have to do the cross multiplication and get the value of theta naught. Do the cross multiplication, what we will get? 65 into 6 minus 6 theta naught is equal to, this is what? 5 to the 10. 570 minus 10 theta naught. So we will rearrange. Okay, so what is this? Left side will have 4 theta naught is equal to, this is what? 570 minus, what is this? 65 into 6. 6 5s are what? 30. 6 6 are 36. This is what? 39. 390. So the 390 will come to the other side. So what is this? Basically this is how much it is? 570 minus 390. This is basically 180 will come. Okay. Now 4 times theta naught is equal to what? 180, which means what? Theta naught will be equal to 180 by 4. That is what? 45. Okay. So what is the answer for this? It is option A. Like this, at JEE mains level, we may have questions in this manner where we'll have 2 separate cases be given and we'll have to link them. Okay. Sometimes, here they are asking what is the temperature of surroundings. Then sometimes, they may ask question about what is the final temperature of the body in one of the cases, like that. They may give some questions. Okay. So, but this is about using the average rate of cooling concept. Now the last idea, right? I think even in one of the previous discussion, I mentioned about this thermos bottle. So if you want to completely prevent the heat transfer from typically like a liquid, usually whether it is a hot liquid or even cold liquid. So you want to completely cut off the liquid with the surrounding. We will use this thermos bottle. So what is the thermos bottle? It will basically try to prevent all the kinds of heat transfer. So how? You will have a double walled metal or a plastic container inside which there will be a silvered surface. So here we will keep the liquid. The silver surface is basically to reflect inside. If there is any radiation, means it should reflect it off. And there will be a vacuum. The vacuum is to prevent any conduction, because conduction requires, so here you can see there is a vacuum, right? Why there is a vacuum? The vacuum is to prevent any conduction. And all the attachments, right? Like you can see the bottom attachment is what? Insulated support. Top also you will have a cork or a stopper that is also made up of what? Insulating material. Then we will have a cup, of course, on top. So basically, completely insulated. And conduction stopped because we are creating a vacuum using the double walled container. So with this, right, look at it, top and bottom we are able to stop the conduction. Sidewise, since we are creating that vacuum that is coming through the double walled metal container, the conduction is stopped. Inside we are keeping a silver surface, right? So any radiation that is going, it will be getting what? Reflected. Even the outer surface also, if any radiation falling on it, right, it will be getting reflected. So as a result, what is happening is net we are able to cut off all the possible methods of heat transfer. And that's the reason why, whether inside we are having a hot liquid or a cold liquid, we can maintain the temperature of it for a longer period. So this is what is the thermos bottle. Okay. Now with this we are kind of complete in terms of the theory portion. Now of course we'll have to see from JEE mains perspective or JEE advanced perspective what kind of variations in terms of the questions can be given and how these concepts will get applied. Okay. So we'll see in the discussion of the previous year questions in both JEE Mains and JEE Advanced for the particular chapter. Okay.